Thank you for joining Beyond the Workbench, a podcast where Odin Clack and Michael Magnus discuss life, business, and how to help entrepreneurs grow and innovate.
Well, thank you for joining us today. We have had a lot of questions over the last few episodes asking questions about merchandising. And every time it comes up, Odin is like, well, we have to talk to my wife. You got to talk to my wife. She's the expert. She's the one who does it. And so fortunately, she has made time for us to have that conversation today. So thank you for joining us, Rachelle Clack, who is on paper, the Chief Operating Officer for Odin Leather Goods. But we know how titles go, that it means you do a little bit of everything all the time.
Right. On paper, it's Chief Operating Officer, which we laugh about because we just put that on paper because I had to put something down, but it definitely changes. I won't even say day by day. It definitely changes minute by minute, hour by hour. It's HR, operations, retail manager, event manager, sales, all the things. So whatever is needed, that's what I am.
Yep. Well, and I think that's part of what's needed for, and critical for small businesses and being able to make those shifts. Now, of all those things you do, one of the things that I think that Odin Leather Goods as a company does really well is merchandising. I can walk past the store and I want to purchase things in the store without ever going in. And I think that's something that you guys do very well. I think it's something that people struggle with. Can you tell me a little bit about your process? And maybe before that, how did you get started in merchandising? Was it with Odin Leather Goods or did you have a background in it beforehand?
That actually makes me I'm cheesing ear to ear because it makes me really proud to hear you say that, because in all fairness, that's not my background. And Odin, he'll say Rachelle is the expert. And I'm just like, it's really humbling because I'm like, no, I'm not. I will honestly say that I've learned a lot along the way. And I think that my biggest learning and what has taught me the most about merchandising is being a customer. I can't turn it off. When I go into a store, any store, it can be a clothing store, it can be a shoe store, it can be a leather store, it can even be something completely unrelated. As a customer, I can't turn it off. I'm always looking at what speaks to me or what irritates me as a customer. Like if I reach for something and half the display falls over, I immediately walk away and I no longer shop that section of the store because I've disrupted the display, or if it's too frustrating or too difficult for me to get to the item that I'm reaching for, then I tend to walk away from that item and I no longer shop that space. So I am constantly, as a customer, it is nonstop, intentional and even unintentional research and education as a customer. That I will say that is my biggest learning. But as far as the background, when we started Odin Leather Goods brick and mortar, which I'm sure everyone knows was not the plan. We actually said no a million times. We had no desire to go brick and mortar at first. And then when the opportunity came our way and we dove into that, I never forget Odin saying in our first store, all right, we've got this box. We have 4 walls and a floor. What do we do with this box? And he and I both stood in that space and we just looked at each other. We were like, we're in over our heads. What do we do? I think as business owners, you have to be smart enough, first of all, to know what you don't know and be okay with that. I think that's the biggest mistake some people make sometimes is even if they know what they don't know, they're not okay with it. And they're not okay asking for help. They're not okay reaching out. They're not okay admitting that this is an area where I'm not proficient in. And so the first thing we did is we reached out to someone who her background was not merchandising either, but we knew her background in decorating and we knew she had created a beautiful store and a beautiful space herself. She was a friend of ours. And so we said, hey, can you come help us just get us started? And she got us started to just figure out what to do with just the blank canvas of our store. And I think just from there, honestly, for me, I just built up on just hearing her speak about what works and what doesn't work. And then honestly, from there, I won't tell the whole story from the first question, but from there was just more of just diving in and learning from what speaks to me. Little things like when she and I work together, one of the biggest things I learned was I always go outside my store and look at how everything looks from outside in, which is funny that you say just walking past, you already engage with a product. It's a big deal for me. Whenever I move things around, I re-merchandise or reset my space, I always go outside and see how things look from the outside in through the windows, up close and from a distance. And then I also walk from outside into my space to see what it looks like as soon as I walk through the front door. What immediately catches my eye? What speaks to me? What do I connect with immediately when I come into my space? Because one time I set my store and I thought it was beautiful. And I remember thinking, when I look into this space, I don't see leather first. I see all the other things. And I'm like, but we're a leather store. And so I'd spent hours, and I thought the space looked great. But I felt like all our non-leather goods were too upfront. And so I immediately reset the whole space because I wanted our goods, the leather goods, because we're a leather store. I wanted our brand and who we are in our story to be upfront. And so I immediately reset the whole space so that our brand was front and center. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, a little bit of my background and how I got to where I am.
Well, I think that you touched on something really important there, right? That merchandising is largely the story of the brand for people
Mhm.
who are coming in. I think something that people don't always think about is based on your location. Sometimes people are shopping your store when it's closed.
Mhm.
Odin and I have had meetings after hours in the store, and it's fascinating to just watch the people who will stand there and look through the window and then take a picture of something, take a picture of the website.
Mhm.
It's not only important what it looks like inside. I think that outside perspective, that curb appeal,
Right.
really is pretty critical because it turns it into kind of a 24-hour a day marketing machine.
Right, definitely. One story I will share is that when it comes to merchandising, everything needs to move and everything changes. You can never get stuck with anything being one way. It's almost like a game. There was one time we had our hook and loop braided bracelets in this jar sitting on a shelf. And I remember thinking, I was sitting there going, those bracelets used to sell like hotcakes all day long, every day. Easy, easy, easy. And I was sitting there thinking, I can't remember. It seemed like they weren't moving the way they normally do. And obviously I don't work the storefront like I used to. So I pulled up my sales reports and was looking at the numbers and I was like, they're not moving like they used to. And so I went and grabbed a few and I went and hung them. We have a foot press in the store just kind of as decor. And sometimes I like to merchandise things in not very non-traditional ways or in spaces you wouldn't normally expect to see product. And so I took a bunch of those bracelets and hung them on the arm of the foot press. And I hung them there. And I kid you not, the very next customer that came in the store, it was two guys. They walked in and they come through the front door and they turned and one of the gentlemen, they walked straight to that foot press and engaged with the bracelets. And I was standing back. I was like a little kid. I was like, oh my gosh, it worked. And it's like a game sometimes when you make seemingly a small change or you just try something and you see it work, and it gets really exciting. So for me, sometimes merchandising becomes a game of what works, what doesn't work. And so it's I know I'm like a little kid giddy, but it was very exciting to see something that wasn't selling, making a change and seeing that it was getting lost in the shelf where it was, but seeing me make that one change and immediately the next customer through the door engage with a product that for a while was not getting a lot of attention. So, sometimes you just have to play a game and try things out and see what happens.
Absolutely. And I think you touched on something important there that I'd like you to kind of go into a little bit more, and that is the role of data in merchandising. I know sometimes it's like, oh, that looks nice, right? But
Mhm.
you talked about looking at sales numbers and things like that. What are some of the things that you guys look at that's like, I'm tired of looking at that, I need something else? Or is it things are selling, things are not selling, right?
Mhm.
What are those driving factors?
We'll hear Odin a lot of times. One of the things he says often is, "Cool doesn't sell." Just because something looks cool doesn't mean it will sell. And he and we actually remind each other of that quite often. And so sometimes something may look really great and you think it's a great idea, but if it's not working, then you have to make a change. And I used to be in the storefront a lot. And so I was very attached to what products are moving. because I try really hard not to work the store. I don't need to cover. I always say you need to be working on the business, not in the business. So I try to stay in my office more often, but I every now and then I will cover a shift in the store every now and then to give my team breaks and days off. But when I'm not up front, I'm not always attached to what's moving because I'm not physically there to see what's being sold. And I'm also not in the back shipping online orders like I used to. So I'm not attached to that day to day task as much as I used to be. And so I have to be in the data. And so for me, it is looking at the sales, looking at the reports, looking at the numbers. And I am not a numbers girl. I don't like charts and graphs and numbers. I mean, even measuring. Odin, it drives Odin crazy. He says we've got 1,000 tools in this workshop, and the fact that you will eyeball anything, it drives him crazy. You should me measuring a straight. I mean, if I have to, I can. But you should see Odin and I working together in a workshop. I drive him crazy because he's like, just use a ruler. I'm like, no, this is a straight line. He's like, how do you know it's straight? I'm like, because I went from this point to that point and my arm went straight. He's like, so me, I if I have to do it, I will. But I numbers, not I'm this not I'm not a fan. But when you're in your role and work is important, business is important, success is important because we're not doing this for fun. It is fun, but at the end of the
Right.
day, I want some revenue, I want some profit. And so I have to dig into the numbers, looking at the reports, looking at the sales data, looking at trends. There was a time that people would ask us, what's our top selling product? And we would kind of flippantly or jokingly say it's whatever we post on Instagram at the time. And there is some truth to that because whatever we're promoting tends to get a lot of attention and a lot of traction. Instagram, works. Of course, there's some novelty to that and things are changing in the way Instagram does and doesn't work with businesses these days. But there is some truth to that. But then there's also a lot of value into getting into the reports, looking at the trends, looking at what's moving, you'll start noticing. I mean, we've been in business for a few years now, and that helps because in the beginning, you had sales data, but you didn't have trends. And so there's a
Mhm.
difference between just having numbers to look at, and now we can compare year over year, month over month to month. I can compare Black Friday this year to Black Friday the previous years because, for us, I have enough data now that I can see for our business. Black Friday is not a huge day for us. We do fine, but that's not a big day for us like it is for other retailers. So that will drive some of the decisions that I make in terms of how any promotions that we do for Black Friday. There's other days that are bigger for us. And so getting into those reports are important. And now, like I said, now that we have a few more years under our belts on the retail side, I actually have trends that I can compare things to as well versus just raw sales data. So that's very important as well because that will drive not only promotions and marketing, but it also does drive merchandising as well. Because I've got some product right now that it's out of season. And then the decision has to be made. Do I leave it up front so it gets attention so I can get rid of it? Do I move it out of the way because it's out of season and it's kind of like out of place to have it up front? Do I put it in a specialized place with a sell sign to move it to get it's a game sometimes, but we live in Texas. The product is grilling related. And personally for me, even though grilling is not in season right now, I could really probably still push it because down here it's what today it's in the 80s. It's
And
November.
Christmas is coming up, and
I prefer to grill in the winter and the fall and winter than the summer anyway. I don't actually grill in season. I grill out of season because I don't believe in grilling I don't like to stand in front of a hot grill when I'm sweating. I can find creative ways to market that product. And so now I'm trying to decide how do I merchandise this quote unquote out of season product? It's out of season for retail standards, but for Texas and our weather and things like that, I may be able to merchandise and market it differently to still get it to move, even though it's technically out of season, where other retailers may take it off their shelves. I may still be able to merchandise it and get it to move.
yeah, and maybe even more in store than online because you
Correct.
really have a captive audience. You mentioned that when you were in store, you had a better pulse on the data, and I I think sometimes it's a little bit of a trap too, right? Because if you like an item and you've sold 3 of it that day, you're like, this is really moving, but you've neglected the item that sold 7 that you don't really like. And so
Mhm.
sometimes, when we go with that gut, not that there's value
True.
in that gut feeling, but sometimes being able to step back and go to the data, it's not just a confirmation bias of, oh, I like that item and it's selling.
Very
It's
true.
it's selling better than other things. Right. I think that's
Very true.
part of the data that comes in handy. For you guys, what makes the difference between a good display and an effective display when you're talking about how you merchandise things in the store?
That's a good question. I have a great example, and I kind of touched on it earlier. A good display, I would say, is something that looks good. You can arrange product in a way that looks fabulous. It attracts customers. It's visually appealing, but it's not shoppable. And I feel like an effective display looks good, but is also shoppable. And what I mean by shoppable is, for example, I guess I'm looking down at my desk because I have a lot of stuff on my desk and I was going to use that as an example, but you can't see my desk. But let's say Odin's Beard Balm, the great Odin's Beard Balm, which smells fabulous, by the way.
Does it smell like Odin?
Well, I mean, I gave him a big bear hug before I left this morning, and it's still lingering a little bit. So that's why when I say the Odin's Beard Balm, I smile because it's lingering. So it smells wonderful. It's a great product. It's amazing at keeping your beard nice and moisturized and keeping those flyaways tamed. Very great product. You should try it. Shameless plug. But the Great Odin's Beard Balm. So let's say I'm merchandising that on the shelf, and of course it's in jars, and I pile them in a really nice, in kind of like a little pyramid. It looks great. I've got some signage and some shelf talkers, and it looks really great. Well, a couple of things. If it's designed in a way where it's visually appealing in like this pyramid, if I take one or two off, well, now that visually appealing pyramid is now disrupted because it's no longer a pyramid. So you designed your display to look a certain way so long as it stays that way, which means if somebody purchases a product, which is what you want to happen, if somebody purchases a product, your display is now disrupted and no longer looks the way it's intended. So why create a display that you don't want to be disrupted? Because as a customer, if I come in and it looks like it shouldn't be disrupted, I may choose not to disrupt it, which means
Mhm.
I don't grab the product and I don't purchase it. Secondly, if I go to grab one and they're all kind of nestled and resting upon each other, and I grab the wrong one and it topples, it creates a problem. And now, as a customer, if I approach this display and I have a concern that if I grab one, is it going to topple? Again, I may second guess engaging with that product.
Or worse, if you do engage with it and it falls, you have this concern of, now I look dumb. Am I accountable for the cost of all of this? Right.
Exactly.
I, as a customer, now have fear about shopping your brand because I look dumb from trying to buy your product. And that's not a good look for how we're trying to interact with customers.
And you'd be surprised that even with grown adults, the things that we may get embarrassed about, even if we don't recognize that we're embarrassed, that may cause someone to leave your store.
Mhm.
And it sounds trivial and it sounds very elementary, but it does happen. I mean, I've seen people shopping in my store where their kid will knock something over and I'll say, oh, it's okay. And they're so worried about their child messing something up or
Mhm.
embarrassing that they'll leave the store, which is why I love kids. If a mom comes in the store with kids and I can see she's trying to shop for her husband, I immediately go in, if within reason. I obviously I feel the scenario out first and I look for cues that it's okay. I will go and engage with the kids and I'm like, "Mom, you go shop. I got this." And I'm cracking jokes with the kids and I'll walk the kids around the store. What do you think this is? And I'll keep the kids distracted so mom can shop. And I've had moms look at me and they're like, "Thank you so much." Because I guess it's the mom and me. I get it. We have a glass in our store with some fake ice cubes in it, and I literally sat on the floor with a toddler once, and we shook the glass and threw the cubes on the floor like it was a jar of dice, and then we sat there and would count the cubes and then put them back in the jar one by one, counting them over and over again, and sat there, and it was because it was just us in the store. And then other customers came in the store. I was like, hey, thanks for welcome in. If you have any questions, I'm sorry. My very important customer right here has me engaged, my most important customer. But if you have any questions, please just let me know. I'm here for you guys too. But what happened was that mom got to shop. The toddler stayed entertained, and gave mom a break. And the other customers in the store they were actually touched by the fact that I took the time to do that for the mom. They was like, "Oh, that was so sweet of you." They shopped, that mom shopped, everybody had a good time, and I have to imagine that me just extending myself a little bit caused them to purchase additional products and see us. People like to shop a story, and they
Mhm.
they like a human connection, and I just feel like if I can make a difference in someone's life, and that in turn leads them to purchase more product, great. And I don't do it to be manipulative, that's just who I am.
Want to add something real quick.
Mhm.
So I will say, I think it's brilliant. I think that's great of how to create those relationships, because people are buying from people, right? If they wanted to
Mhm.
buy online, they could go to Walmart, they could go to Amazon,
Right.
whatever. And so I think that human connection is there. And if anybody is like, I'm not great with kids, I can't do that. I bet there's not a single person who's selling leather goods in their shop that doesn't have some scrap veg tin and a modeling spoon. Which then gets a kid interested in leathercraft, so it's I think that there's plenty of opportunities to engage with young people that even if you don't have those type of things, and if you know that you have that, maybe have some coloring books. That may seem so silly, but just
Mhm.
be prepared for what your customers need to be able to
Right.
buy.
A ballpoint pen and some natural veg tan. Sit there and let them be creative. Hey, while mom is shopping, if you got a artwork on a wall that has a cow on it, go figure. Can you draw a cow? Let me see your cow. Just find ways. But what you said is true. People do like the human connection. Even when I, put my HR hat on, whenever I am hiring people for our retail store, one of the things that I talk about during our onboarding process is people like to shop stories and have that
Mhm.
connection. And so when I am training our new hires, I share with them some of my stories about products. And I say, feel free to use my stories, but the longer you're with us, I encourage you to find your own stories. If you purchase any of our products, and sometimes we'll give some of them away too to our to our employees because I want you to understand the product. If we have a class, sometimes I'll have our employees, if guys come, you don't have to pay for it. Come sit through the class because I want you to experience what that's like. I'm glad that, especially at our Louisville location, those who are work our retail here, a lot of times can have opportunities to get involved in some of our product and help out in the workshop a little bit. And that gets them engaged a lot more in terms of who we are, what we do. Oh, when I made that product, it becomes more personal when someone says, well, what do you like about this? Or should I purchase this one or this one? They can say, well, this is great for this reason, or this is great for that reason. Or, sometimes people like the stories about how certain products got their name.
Mhm.
And it becomes a funny story. And so I will tend to share those things in the store when people are shopping and asking questions about the products. Do you think my wife would like this and why? Well, I've got plenty of stories of other women who have purchased this product and then what they liked about it and how they use it that I can then share, or a goofy story about something that I, did, or, sometimes when I don't know, I feel like when I poke fun at myself, people tend to I don't know, that tends to connect with people. I don't know why. But any kind of story you can share of why, especially even some of our non-leather goods, when I share why that product is in our store, people tend to connect with it more. There's one brand we carry, and I often share how when we first were approached with going brick and mortar, and now we were fish out of water. We've never worked retail. Our background, we've done everything under the umbrella collectively between Odin and I: marketing, sales, consulting, product management, product launch, product development, e-commerce. Everything under the umbrella of marketing collectively, Odin and I have touched on in some capacity in our professional careers. The one thing he and I have never done is retail. Even in high school, when all of our friends probably worked at the mall at some point in time, we never even worked at the mall. So retail is really outside of our scope. The fact that we have what we have is amazing. When we were approached with this opportunity, We ended up at a store in Houston, and the owner just poured into us. And we were in there one day shopping around, and we had a familiarity that he knew us, but didn't like know us. But he was like, "You guys are great. I love your brand. Been following you guys. Love what you're doing. There's space for everybody." And I love when people say that. Like, well, we're not in competition. There's space for everyone. He just started sharing. He was like, he walked us around his store and was like, "This is a really good brand. You all should carry this in your store. Here's a great contact. Y'all should reach out to this person." Walked us around the store, gave us some great ideas about things that we should and shouldn't do, brands we should carry. And so as a result, we have some of his product in our store, labeled goods in our store, and we probably will always carry some of his things. But I don't share that story in that great of a detail. Obviously, if you come to my store, I'm not going to download, the whole story, but sometimes I'll share very high level. "Oh yeah, we carry that because of this reason. We carry that because of this reason." And people love to hear kind of how that product came to be part of the Odin of the Good story. They develop a connection with it for that reason as well.
So something that you started in on a minute ago, and I want to circle back to it is, are there any final thoughts on the difference between a good display and an effective display? Because this is a great conversation. I just want to make sure
Right.
we don't miss any tips that you have on that
Sure.
particular topic.
One of the things that I always really, really enforce is front and face your products. And ironically, I learned this of all places the very, very long 2 months that I worked at Walgreens. I did, so I guess that could be considered retail. So I worked at
Yeah.
Walgreens for 2 months in high school. And that was one of their rules: front and face your products. And that has always stuck with me. So in my store, one of the things that make things, in my opinion, effective, all your products should be pulled to the front of the shelf and should always be face front. I find myself walking through the grocery store fixing because I can't turn it off. If I see
Oh,
something where the label is not face forward, I can't not fix it. So that's a big thing. Front and face your product.
I was going to say I'm 100% with you on that one. My family had a gas station that I would go work at during the summers, and that was always one of the things. And it actually drives my wife nuts because when I'm putting, cans of soda in the fridge, I merchandise my refrigerator. I can't not. Like it just becomes part of who you are.
So I'm not that bad. Now I will say, so here's what's crazy, and I'm going to get back to the question. I've heard people walk into the store and I'd be like, I wonder if, and sometimes people don't know because Odin is definitely the face of our brand, who we are. A lot of people don't know who I am or where I fit into the business. Matter of fact, some of my closest girlfriends will be like, "Oh my gosh, Odin's doing so great." Oh, they'll walk into the store. He's got so much product in his store. And I'm sitting there going, "Yeah, I did all this." And I'm like, you're like one of my closest girlfriends. You're one of one of my sorority sisters one day made a comment. I'm like, yeah, yeah, all of this that you're talking about, that was me. I did all that. But yeah, give all the credit to Odin. Sure, fine, whatever. It's fine. It's fine. I'm just gonna fade to the background. And it's so funny because our relationship, he's more like the background person. Like, leave me alone. Let me sit over here in the corner by myself and do my thing. And so when it comes to Odin Leather Goods, our roles are a lot more reversed. So it's just very interesting, our dynamic and our relationship and things like that. And so, but it's funny when people come to the store, they'll say, "I wonder if Odin's house looks like this. I love the way this looks. It's decorated so nice and da 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 da." And I'm just sitting there going, "Yeah, I did all this." And no, our house looks nothing like this. 'Cause we put so much energy into this space, and then we go home, and I'm just like, the rails are off. My refrigerator, I'm like, my kids are lucky. I'm like, "Y'all hungry? I'm sorry. Let me go ahead and Instacart some food. Oh, I need to cook. That's right. I need to cook dinner." And I just throw everything in. I have kids, so I don't put my groceries away.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I have children. Like, you put stuff away. Odin says I have graduated. There's no reason for me to ever have to do that kind of labor around the house. That's why we have children. But in the store, yes, I'm very meticulous about things like that, front and facing the product. And then there are certain little nitpicky things that we do. Our baseball caps, all of our hats. It seems so silly. Our hats always hang off the edge of the shelf. The bill of the hat always hangs off the edge of the shelf. It tells people that it's okay for them to grab it and pick it up and engage with the hat. There's those little subtle cues. If the hat is pushed back to where the bill of the hat is flush with the edge of the shelf, people will kind of look at it and they may or might not engage with. But if that bill is hanging off the edge of the shelf, there's something about having it hang off the edge of the shelf that gives people permission to reach up and grab it. It's those little subtle things that as a customer, you may not ever think about when you're in a space that I have learned and picked up along the way. Some of it I've learned myself from my own just, reading and just absorbing information. And some of it we actually had a merchandising expert spend half a day with us. He came in. You have to have your thick skin on because he's a very quirky guy and he has no filter. And so when we have recommended him to other people, we are very careful who we recommend him to, because if you got to have the right personality for him, he walks in and immediately started going, "That's wrong. That's crap. That's hideous. Why would you do that? Take this." And he literally just starts tearing your store apart. Spent 4 hours with him one day and learned a wealth of knowledge, and I built on that as well. So to go back to one of your previous questions about my background and how to learn what I know and how to get where I am, a lot of that foundation also started with, his name is Josh. He spent some time with us on 2 different occasions. And so little things like that I've learned from him. Other things that make your displays effective is if you have a product that you have to explain for people to understand what it is, then you need to create a display that demonstrates it. People are less likely to ask those kind of questions. They don't want to. It's weird. People will engage with you. They don't want to have to ask the price, and they don't want to have to ask
Mhm.
what something is. They're less likely to do that. And a lot of times I don't like putting ugly barcode labels on everything because it's not always cute. On some products, you have to. Other products, you have to have ways to communicate the price because people don't want to ask the price. And sometimes asking the price will prevent them from buying the product. It's crazy,
Mhm.
but it's true. Other things is we have a cable tool roll. It's one of our products that is the most confusing for people. This sitting on a shelf communicates nothing. And we used to have these sitting in a bowl or sitting in a tray and just sitting on the shelf like this. They would not. We were like, these are like online, they sold great. In the store, would not move at all. And we could not figure out why. People didn't know what it was. And so it wasn't until we opened it up. So obviously we went and got some spare boards and cubes. And so now on my shelf in the store, I have a bunch of them rolled up sitting in a tray. So now I have this. I have a nail in one of these holes, and it's literally hanging in front on the edge of my shelf in the store with
Hmm.
cords in each of these slots. And I actually have a cube sitting inside of the pocket. So when someone walks in the store, they don't have to ask me what it is. They can look at it with their eyes. Just like we say we eat with our eyes first. We're visual people. I engage with my eyes first. So when I see this hanging off the shelf, they know exactly what it is and what it's for. They'll look at it and go, "Oh my gosh, that's so creative. That's such a great idea." And then when they also see it rolled up on the shelf, then it also communicates to them that the cords and the cubes are in here. It also rolls up and then travels. And so that's a great example of a very effective display is you don't want people to have to guess what a product is. Sometimes it's really good to have shelf talkers or something visual, marketing collateral, something that is just in terms of signage. But then sometimes it's better to have the actual product that is staged, that communicates what it is and how it works.
Hmm.
And that to me, certain products like this one is 1,000 times better to have it staged versus having just like a shelf talker.
We have been taught to shop online in a lot of ways, right? So when I
Mm-hmm.
look for a product, I am used to the Amazon way of shopping where I can see the product and I can
Mm-hmm.
see its use and I can see
Mm-hmm.
5 or 6. I have no confusion around it, right? So the ways that we purchase things changes over time based on the norms that we become accustomed to. And
Yeah,
so
good
that
point.
lends itself to kind of what you're talking about, that as people get more comfortable with having all the information when they buy something,
Mm-hmm.
which can be overwhelming, don't get me wrong. But
Yeah.
if most of my shopping is on Amazon, there are probably things to even learn from the way that Amazon formats some of that information,
Good point.
because
Yeah.
that's the way that people have been trained to buy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a principle for it, but it is something that is often used in website design. For e-commerce, what does
Yes.
Amazon do? Because people have gotten so accustomed to that. How can we make sure that we don't have a totally different and contrary experience to Amazon?
Mm-hmm.
Because if somebody has to relearn how to buy things as soon as they come to our website, it's fumbly. They don't know how to search for things. And so I
Right.
think that to reinforce your point, if
Hmm.
people don't have that context of what it does,
They're gonna keep moving.
it's not going to move, partially because they don't know what it does, partially because we've become accustomed to full information.
Hmm. That's a good point.
Kind of an interesting thing there.
Hmm.
Now, I did have one question that is vaguely related to merchandising, but it's kind of the step before that, right? When people are looking at their brick and mortar stores, whether they should have one or not, the
Hmm.
location, we always have heard location, 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 right? That's a big piece of it. Do you have any thoughts for if anybody's either looking to
Hmm.
start their first brick and mortar store, or if they are looking to upgrade to another brick and mortar store so that they can expand? What are some of the factors that you guys looked at when you started upgrading and expanding?
Wow, that question is probably more loaded than you realize. I honestly would be interested in in a commercial real estate agent's answer to that question. I would be really curious to hear that kind of a response, but I'm going to give you my response. For me, location does matter. However, if you have a strong brand and a strong following, don't take that for granted.
Hmm.
So I'll start there first. Our very first store we opened March of 2020. And we all know what happened March of 2020. We opened on a Monday. Our grand opening event was March 7th. Our grand closing was March 13th when the whole world shut down. And I will say that there were several stores that opened in the same development where we are, that did not survive, that did not come back after the world reopened. I strongly feel that a lot of our success had to do with the fact that we had a strong brand online and else before we went brick and mortar. And I think that that helps sustain us. Not, I don't think, I know that that is what helps sustain us through all that. I do not take for granted that we had a strong brand prior to brick and mortar, because that people came and looked for us. Even to
Hmm.
this day, there are people who have come to either location who have told us, I live in South Dakota, or I live in Mississippi, I live in Washington, but I've been
Wow.
following you guys for years. I happen to be in Texas for work. I knew coming to Dallas, I was not going to leave without coming to your store. We had a couple who came into our Louisville location recently. They live a 2.5, almost 3 hour drive away. They're recently retired and literally got in their car and made a day trip to drive to Old Town Louisville to come to our store, shopped here, spent some time with us here, left our Louisville store, drove to Grandscape, shopped at our Grandscape store, had a meal out in Grandscape, hung out there for a little bit, stayed overnight, and drove back home. Literally made a day trip of 2.5 hours to Dallas just to visit our two stores.
Wow.
So that tells me that when you have a brand, that people will come to you, because I shop online, but I want to come see the space. I want to come see the store. I want to be a part of the story. So don't take that for granted. With that being said, those scenarios alone is not enough to support a brick and mortar store, depending on where you are and what your rent is and all those other things. So with that aside, I will say that you really have to look at a lot of different scenarios. I mean, obviously, foot traffic is a huge thing. I do believe that we're seeing the death of malls. So, like you were talking a second ago about people shop and buy differently because we're trained to see information
Hmm.
a certain way. We shop differently. People are not going to the malls and walking for hours on end in and out of stores. People are more commonly are shopping online, or they will shop and go to a specific boutique. People do love shopping small. They love shopping stories.
Hmm.
They like small businesses. I will honestly say, I hate to say it this way, but there was a time where people specifically shopped us because we're Black owned business, because of some things that were going on in our country that wasn't necessarily so popular, and people wanted to shop a Black owned business. Sometimes you find success in, ironically, in things that are not always, the most popular, things happen for different reasons.
Hmm.
So foot traffic does make a huge difference. So I think that's the biggest thing is figuring out who your audience is or who you want your audience to be. If you don't already know, figure out who your audience is and figure out where are they. Either find a location where that audience is or find a location that your audience would want to go to. For
Mhm.
us, I will tell you, we didn't pick our location like that. Our location picked us. When Grandscape picked us, and then when we chose our Louisville location, we honestly were just looking for another workshop. At that time, we weren't looking for another retail location. But when we found this location for our workshop, which that's a whole other story how that happened, it definitely was serendipity for us. It didn't make sense not to have have a retail location up front. And when we moved into this location, there was not anything going on in this area. We moved in and just blessing that not too long after we moved in, this whole area started being built up. Now there's a ton of housing that's been built up and there's a ton of foot traffic. One thing I have learned, I sat in a meeting with an economic developer. I didn't know this because I thought it was the other way around. They said that what creates a walkable community is not the businesses, it's the homes. If you're wanting a location that's in a small town, like an old town, small town community, if that's what you're wanting with a lot of foot traffic, you should look for one that has a lot of homes around versus one that has a lot of businesses.
Interesting.
The amount of people and amount of homes in an area will drive businesses to come in, and the amount of people walking up and down the street will attract more people to come. And it takes a certain amount of people on the street for other people to drive by and consider it a walkable community. And so it's the residential developments that drives that.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I thought it was the other way around. If you're looking at newer developments, like small towns that are moving in, if you're looking at those kind of developments, you then look for ones that have a lot more residential areas close in to that small town center or that old town, because that will drive other businesses to come in and that will drive a lot of that foot traffic. Where we are here in Louisville, there's a lot of new homes and apartments and townhomes that have been built up around this area. And now we're seeing a huge uptake in foot traffic. Here's a caveat. We have two locations. One location has a higher quantity of sales, and one location has, although a lower quantity of sales, the dollar amount per sales is higher. Our location that has a lower quantity of sales outperforms the other location in revenue.
Because they're higher ticket prices. People are spending, they're
Exactly.
buying multiple items instead of.
And larger items. And I think
Interesting.
so. Here's the difference. At our other location, we may have more people coming through, but it's in a location that is surrounded by a lot of entertainment venues where people are coming to eat, drink, and play. So
Hmm.
they don't want to come and shop and carry around a bag with a tote bag and a bunch of large items. They may come in and buy a bunch of smalls and then they leave and they may go home and say, you know what, I saw that forever tote that I fell in love with. They'll buy it online and have it shipped to them, but they're not going to buy it in store. So you have to also know the area that you're in. I know that my other store, and again, looking at the data, I don't sell a lot of my large items in that store, but I keep a lot of my large items in that store because people fall
Hmm.
in love with the items while they're there and then go home and buy them online.
Smart.
So again, location, if that was my only location, then I would have a huge increase from a merchandising standpoint. I would primarily stock my store with smaller items. And also from a production standpoint, Odin and I would get together and say, okay, what are some other items that we can start producing that have a higher ticket dollar value, but is a small item? How
Right.
can I increase my revenue at that store, but with items that are still small because people are not shopping big items, big as
Right.
in size?
Like a premium wallet.
Exactly. How can I get
Yeah.
some premium products that are still small in size? If that was my only location, those are the questions we would have to start asking ourselves from a business standpoint, production standpoint, design standpoint, merchandising standpoint. All of that ties into it. So that's where Odin and I, come together. And honestly, I'm not an expert when it comes to location. We are looking at the idea of, a third location. I would love to have a third location. It's the bandwidth to get out there and find. I mean, there's some areas that we're interested in. But it also takes time to get out there and do your due diligence, to do the research. I know there's some areas that we could easily kill it, but of course, it's not just find a spot. It's a process. So,
Question that just came up in my mind as we were discussing that, from a merchandising perspective, do you guys do any bundling? So we're talking about like higher ticket prices and things like that. And, maybe somebody having a belt and a watch strap and a billfold all made out of the same leather as a bundle is a fairly high checkout, as a fairly high
mhm.
ticket. Do you guys do much of that, or is it mostly one-off items?
Mostly one off. That's something that I've been interested in. There's no rhyme or reason why we haven't. Other than we just haven't. We've talked about it, but usually we that conversation comes up between Odin and I. Usually, like around the holidays, around big gift giving times, like Father's Day and things like that. Our pillow talk sometime is, should we bundle some? Like when you're in business together, it kind of takes over. I always say we're partners in business and life, and sometimes that business takes over the life part. People will be shocked to see us sitting down having the two of us having a business meeting because when we turn on our business hats, if you were a fly on the wall, you might forget that we're a married couple when we're having a business conversation. My friends would be like, "Y'all are so weird." But nonetheless, we have that dialogue sometimes about bundling. We've never really done it before. We've tried it a couple of times with like a promotion, like on
Hmm.
Black Friday and things like that. And I will honestly say it never really seemed to make that big of a splash for us. So we've never put a lot of energy into it, but it's something I'm always open to. I think honestly, maybe this is the girl in me. I feel like that type of a option would work really great with the fanny pack. And like now we have I call it the micro bag, like the little mini purses, because that's a trend now
Hmm.
where your mini purse or your fanny or your crossbody is not just a purse, it's also an accessory.
Hmm.
And all the accoutrements that you add to it, it's part of your outfit. It's not just a purse to carry your
Right.
stuff. It's part of your outfit. That's kind of the trend. And so bundling those types of things, if we had like a certain kind of a fanny pack or a mini purse or crossbody that had keychains and different little swag that you could like attach
Hmm.
to it. Bundling for us maybe more of we may do it in line with some of the trends and then move on. But I haven't really seen it really make a huge impact when we've tried it in the past.
Okay. Well, I had this whole grand plan that we were going to split this session to talk about merchandising and brand activations. And we've had great conversations about merchandising. So we'll have to do this again and hang out another time
Yeah.
to talk about brand activations. But I do have one last question
Mhm.
that I want to ask you that kind of piggybacks off of what we were just discussing a little bit. A lot of our listeners and viewers connect with the program because they connect with the stories of Odin or I and kind of our business struggles or things we've learned and things like that. And so the question I have as somebody who's worked more closely with him than anybody else is for anybody who identifies with Odin in the way that they process things and build their business, what are some of the key pieces of advice that you would give to them that you've seen help Odin over the years? Not what advice you think Odin should hear, and we're just using this as a workaround,
I can't
but
just unleash.
we can. Maybe that's episode two.
This
But
is not oh, you should do this better segment of the episode. No. This is so not the wife answer, but the business partner answer. No,
the business partner answer, people who identify with Odin because they have some familiar traits, they do business, they think the same way. What are things that you feel that you've helped him with significantly over the years that may be some aha moments for those people?
immediately, if you were to ask me this in advance, I probably could like outline a very eloquent ABCD answer, but just flooding to my head, some of the first things that come to my mind is one is trust. You've built a brand, you've built a team, you have people around you. Because some people, I know some people listening probably are still a party of one and it's all on them. But if you're not in a scenario, or if you are a party of one and you're looking at kind of taking your business or craft to the next level, my encouragement is learn to trust others. You're never going to grow if everything is all on you. And I think that was that was a big moment for Odin and even just with me. I mean, I've been involved with the business since day one, but in the early days, it was just, hey, Rachelle, can you come out to the garage and help me, cut out these 5,000 coasters on this Mighty Wonder, all manual by hand, and ab workout, helping out here and there until I actually left corporate and came into the business and we started building it together as partners. But in the early days, it was just helping out here and there. But I've been around since day one. But when I came on as a business partner, we started building it together. Even for me, for somebody who he knows and trusts and loves dearly, it was still hard for him to even let go of a lot of the business for me to take on. And I didn't take it personal, but because I get it, this is your brand, it's your baby, but you're never going to get to the next level. So even, you have guys we have guys in the workshop now. He had to get to a point to where he could say, okay, this is my brand, this is my product, this is my design. Okay, I'm going to let you go and make it for me. And I'm going to go into the office and do this. And I'm gonna leave you in the workshop alone. And I mean, it was almost like you could just sense this. It took a lot for him to kind of get past it. And it is still a work in progress. So I think trust is a big one. The other thing is I remind him daily to let go of guilt. Odin will, and he will probably say it's not true, but when you're building a business, it's very easy to feel like, it's all on you. And it's very hard for him to let things go and go to sleep at night sometimes if he knows there's work that still needs to get done. I remind him a lot that God gave you one body, one heart, one set of lungs, you have to take care of yourself. So that's two things. One, your health, take care of your health, and two, let go of guilt. Sometimes it is okay to say, you know what, tonight I'm going to go to sleep. I'm going to get some rest. I'm going to hit it hard the next day. And it's okay to do that. I think sometimes he'll guilt himself and say, oh, I shouldn't have came home and went to bed tonight because now this is piling up. But you know what? Again, going back to that trust factor, if it's piling up, that's when we pick up the phone and say, okay, we've got people who are willing to help. Call in somebody and say, I need somebody to come in. I need an intern. I need to come in $9, $10 an hour. I need you to sit here and glue these leather pieces together for me. I need you call in help. And we're getting to that point where, it doesn't have to be all on you. So I think that sometimes you have to let go of that. I think it's that just that entrepreneur's guilt of, if it's going to be successful, I have to work, 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 work. You actually, you don't. Sometimes it's okay to just catch your breath, take a second. I had a gentleman tell me, he's much older. His name is Steve. He has built a couple of different businesses. Some have been successes, some have been failures, and some he sold. He's a little bit older than that. He's probably in his 60s by now. He says, if you get to a certain age and you're not able to pay yourself X amount of dollars in your business, and you're not able to do these things, he says, then you have to ask yourself why you're doing it. Now, if you tell me you're doing this just for fun because you enjoy it, that's different. But if you're doing this because you want your business to be a success and you have a certain revenue goals, you have certain, then and if you're not hitting these marks by this point, you've got to be okay cutting your losses. And I think sometimes we get so caught up in what we're doing that sometimes we'll guilt ourselves to a fault to stick with certain things. It's like sometimes you have to say it's okay for me to let certain things go. It's okay for me to take a nap. It's okay for me to do.
Mhm.
So I think trust is a big thing. Letting go of guilt is a big thing. Health is a big thing, taking care of your health. And then the last thing I will say is I think that diagnosed or undiagnosed, society has turned all of us into ADD or ADHD people.
Yeah.
Because we are constantly inundated by updates and alerts, and we're just inundated all day long by stuff that I
Mhm.
think that even if you're not, our brains are just all day long.
Oh, yeah.
I think the last thing I will say is, and I'm learning this too because I'm guilty of this as well. You have a lot of activity, but no productivity. Learning how to find tools to help you with that, and that's where I'm talking to myself as
Hmm.
well. I actually just had this conversation with somebody the other day. Her name is Marva. We call her Marva the Marvelous. Is I need to find tools to help me because I'm noticing that I'm starting to work like somebody with an ADD brain and I'm having a lot of activity, no productivity. So now it's learning how to find some resources to help me be more
Hmm.
focused and segment my time to be more productive. So trust, letting go of guilt, taking care of your health, finding those tools and resources to help you focus in to be more productive versus just active. That was I didn't mean to say that much stuff. Odin tells me all the time, nobody wants to hear all that. You got to be more concise. He's probably going to be, if he's watching, he's probably sitting over there, like taking notes and like being Mr. Judgy because I am the more verbose of the two of us. And I come from a background of old Black Baptist preachers and so it's tangents and long-windedness is like genetic and hereditary for me. So good luck, Wolf, with all the editing and the the tangents and long-windedness. Have fun.
That's part of the reason that people listen to this podcast, though, is that conversational kind of nature of it and just kind of the personal, because a lot of people are listening to it in their shops as they work. And so that familiarity and kind of just casualness, I think is great. Now, before we wrap up, I know that a lot of people know the Odin Leather Goods social handles, but if they want to follow you, if they want to learn more about you and what you're doing, throw out the Instagram handle, any other social media handles where people can follow more about what you're doing.
So here's what's funny. Ironically, I kind of have multiple personalities. And so I do a lot with Odin Leather Goods, obviously. But on the side, I people have come to know that I've done some pageants, which I
Hmm.
stumbled into in 2021. It's a whole funny story. Got into a little bit of modeling and things like that and other things as a result of that. So Ray, RAY, Ray underscore Clack underscore official is that Instagram. So I do a lot of posting there in my other life, but also some old and other good stuff there as well. And then R Clack, RCLACK is a lot of Odin Mrs. Odin Leather good stuff, but that's where all like my kiddo stuff as well and all my mom stuff and my philanthropy. And I'm all over the place in a good way. I do a lot of volunteer work and philanthropy work, pageant work, volunteer. I actually just hosted my own pageant that I own myself this past
Wow.
weekend and did some mentor work with some young girls, which like I may tear up if I start talking about it because it was very exciting and I really some things I'm passionate about with things that I did mentor wise with some young ladies. So it was very exciting. So I do a lot of things along with Odin Leather Goods, running a business and running all things life and been the crazy sports mom. I may look quiet and cute sometimes, but if you find me on the sideline somewhere, I'm loud and crazy. So I love being a sports mom as well. So you'll see some of that and on Instagram as well. So Ray Clack Official and R Clack are my handles. And of course, there's always Odin Leather Goods, where I live most of my life.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Beyond the Workbench. You can reach us on social platforms at Beyond the Workbench on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Also check out beyondtheworkbench.com and listen to more episodes on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts.